A 23-year-old woman sets out on a soul-searching road trip across America. Days later, her Jeep is found crashed deep in the Washington wilderness. Personal items untouched. Cash still inside, and no trace of her anywhere. No blood, no struggle, no answers. For over 20 years, Leah Roberts' disappearance has baffled investigators and haunted a nation. What really happened on that lonely forest road? And why has no one come forward? This is the story of a journey into the unknown and a mystery that refuses to be forgotten. Leah Toby Roberts was born on July 23, 1976, in Durham, North Carolina. The youngest of 3 siblings, she grew up in a close-knit household with her older brother Heath and sister Cara. From an early age, Leah was known for her lively spirit and adventurous heart. She approached the world with a vibrant curiosity, the kind that left a lasting impression on everyone who met her. Her family remembers her as someone who was both intellectually engaged and emotionally warm, qualities that shaped much of her path in life. At the age of 17, Leah's life took a dramatic turn when her father was diagnosed with a debilitating chronic illness. The news weighed heavily on the family, and it was during this time that Leah began to process the fragility of life in more personal terms. Just a few years later, while Leah was attending North Carolina State University, her mother died suddenly from heart disease. The loss was profound. Leah, who had always leaned on her family for strength, now found herself navigating a new emotional landscape, one marked by grief, introspection, and quiet resilience. Despite these challenges, Leah remained academically dedicated. She majored in Spanish and anthropology, reflecting her deep interest in culture, language, and human connection. She had a unique way of immersing herself in whatever captivated her mind. Friends and professors alike described her as engaged and perceptive, someone who wasn't afraid to question the world around her. In 1998, another life-altering event occurred. Leah was involved in a serious car accident that left her with a punctured lung and a shattered femur. She required extensive surgery and had a metal rod implanted in her leg. The physical healing took time, but the psychological impact ran deeper. Then, in 1999, her father passed away, an event that would mark a profound turning point in Leah's emotional and spiritual journey. In the months leading up to her disappearance in early 2000, Leah Roberts underwent a noticeable transformation. Following the loss of both parents and a near-fatal car accident, she began searching for deeper meaning beyond the confines of daily life. She turned to literature, specifically the writings of Jack Kerouac, whose spiritual memoir, The Dharma Bums, resonated deeply with her. The themes of nonconformity, inner exploration, and a spontaneous journey toward enlightenment captivated her imagination. Kerouac's tales of seeking transcendence through travel seemed to mirror what Leah herself longed for. Though just shy of completing her degree in Spanish and anthropology at North Carolina State University, Leah made the decision to withdraw. This was not a rash or impulsive act, but rather a deliberate pivot towards something undefined yet urgently personal. Friends recall her speaking openly about self-discovery and her desire to embark on a meaningful adventure. She no longer felt tethered to traditional expectations. Instead, she leaned into her yearning for freedom, nature, and introspection. Her worldview was evolving, and it became increasingly clear that she was preparing for a journey, one that would not be announced or explained. On March 9, 2000, Leah took a definitive step. She withdrew $3,000 in cash from her bank account. That same day, she left a note for her roommate, Nicole Weeks. It was brief but revealing. Referencing the Dharma Bums, she wrote, "I'm not suicidal, I'm the opposite." The message struck a balance between assurance and enigma. Leah made clear that her departure was not an escape from life, but a pursuit of something she believed to be life-affirming. She packed her belongings, loaded them into her white 1993 Jeep Cherokee, and left Durham without informing her friends or family of her destination. The road trip was unannounced, unscheduled, and solitary. But through scattered sightings and transactions, a path began to emerge. Over the next few days, Leah traveled westward across the country. Surveillance footage and debit card usage helped confirm her movements. The last known visual of Leah came from a gas station surveillance camera in Brooks, Oregon, on March 13th. In the footage, she appears calm and composed. She moves with quiet confidence, showing no signs of distress. Her physical appearance matched earlier descriptions: healthy, alert, and seemingly at peace with her decision. This brief but telling encounter is the final confirmed glimpse of Leah before her disappearance. There was no recorded conversation, no sign of trouble, and no indication that she was in danger. It would be the last time anyone saw her alive. The footage does not provide answers, only a moment frozen in time, a woman on a solitary journey, chasing something intangible yet vital to her. Leah's actions in these final days speak to an inner urgency that only she fully understood. Her decision to withdraw from her academic life, her interest in Kerouac, the handwritten note, the solo drive across the country, all point to a deliberate, introspective quest. Whether this path was meant to be temporary, transformational, or permanent remains unclear. But what is certain is that Leah set out with intention, seeking something beyond the ordinary. The road she chose was quiet, personal, and unexplained, yet its implications would echo far beyond the empty highways she traveled. On March 18, 2000, Leah Roberts' white 1993 Jeep Cherokee was discovered in a remote ravine off Canyon Creek Road, located in North Cascades National Park, Washington. The area is rugged and sparsely traveled, a winding forest road surrounded by dense trees and steep drop-offs. The vehicle had left the road and crashed violently into the ravine below. However, what investigators found at the scene raised more questions than answers. The Jeep showed signs of having gone off the road at a high rate of speed. The impact was severe. Yet curiously, there were no signs that Leah or anyone had been inside during the crash. No blood was present, and there were no traces of injury such as torn fabric or broken glass with blood. The airbag had deployed, but the absence of any biological evidence suggested the vehicle may have been unoccupied when it went over the edge. Mechanical examination revealed the car's starter relay had been tampered with. This meant the Jeep could have been intentionally placed into gear and set rolling without anyone in the driver's seat. Beneath the hood, fingerprints were recovered, but they did not match anyone in the system. This unidentifiable evidence introduced the unsettling possibility of another individual's involvement. The prints were isolated to the engine area and not found elsewhere in the vehicle, indicating whoever left them may have been manipulating the engine components. Inside and around the Jeep, Leah's personal belongings remained, untouched and intact. Her driver's license, passport, checkbook, and credit card were all found inside the vehicle. Additionally, nearly all the cash she had withdrawn before her trip, $2,400 of the original $3,000, was still present. These items, easily portable and valuable, appeared to have been deliberately left behind, further complicating assumptions about robbery or an intentional disappearance. Leah's guitar was located in the Jeep along with several CDs, suggesting she had brought personal comforts on her journey. There was also a cat carrier and cat food, hinting at the presence of her kitten, B. However, the animal was not found at the scene. Among all these items, one stood out the most: her mother's diamond engagement ring. According to those close to Leah, this was her most treasured possession, and she rarely took it off. The ring was discovered under a floor mat, hidden from plain view. The placement of such a sentimental object in a concealed location sparked further speculation. Another detail that caught investigators' attention was the presence of blankets and pillows hanging over the Jeep's interior windows. This arrangement indicated Leah had likely been sleeping in the vehicle at some point. It supported the idea that she had been living out of the Jeep during parts of her journey. The setup suggested intention and planning, a person adapting to life on the road, rather than someone in crisis. Despite the meticulous documentation of the scene, there were no footprints or obvious signs of movement around the crash site. No drag marks, no trails, no clothing fragments scattered in the surrounding forest. The absence of any human trace was striking. Given the remote location, if Leah had exited the vehicle before or after the crash, some physical sign of her passage might have been expected. Yet the forest offered nothing. Search teams combed the area in the days following the discovery, deploying search dogs and specialized teams to look for clues. Still, they found no evidence of Leah's presence beyond the vehicle itself. The terrain was challenging, cold, steep, and thick with underbrush. But exhaustive efforts yielded no physical confirmation of her fate. To law enforcement and family alike, the crash scene was baffling. The fact that Leah's valuable items, including cash and identification, were left untouched cast doubt on theories involving robbery or abduction for material gain. The tampered starter relay and unidentified fingerprints suggested interference, but no conclusive link could be made. And the presence of deeply personal belongings, including the hidden ring, only added emotional weight to an already confusing scene. Forensic investigators worked to reconstruct a plausible sequence of events, but without Leah's presence or eyewitness accounts, the task proved elusive. What was clear is that the Jeep had not gone over the edge by accident. Whether it was pushed, released, or otherwise manipulated remained an open question. The nature of the crash, coupled with the condition of the vehicle and the arrangement of Leah's belongings, left investigators with an incomplete puzzle. As the Jeep was towed from the ravine and placed in police custody, it became the central piece of physical evidence in Leah's disappearance. Every fingerprint, fabric fiber, and object was cataloged, yet none offered the definitive answers investigators hoped for. The scene told a story, but not a complete one. Without Leah, the meaning behind the details remained out of reach. The Jeep, silent and still, became both artifact and enigma, marking the end of Leah's visible journey and the beginning of a mystery that endures to this day. Following the discovery of Leah Roberts' Jeep in a ravine off Canyon Creek Road on March 18, 2000, the investigation into her disappearance began immediately. The remote crash site, the absence of a body, and the strange state of the vehicle presented investigators with a mystery that lacked a clear starting point. The early focus centered on the possibility that Leah had been in the vehicle at the time of the crash and suffered a head injury, prompting her to wander into the dense surrounding forest. Search teams were dispatched within days. Local authorities and search and rescue teams canvassed the area using ground personnel, helicopters, and cadaver dogs. The steep terrain and heavy vegetation complicated efforts, but multiple sweeps were conducted. Despite the extensive search, no physical trace of Leah was found. Not a shoe, scrap of clothing, nor human remains. Nothing indicated her presence beyond the vehicle itself. The theory that she might have walked away from the scene became increasingly difficult to support without supporting physical evidence. The discovery of the Jeep intact, along with nearly all of Leah's personal items and cash, shifted the focus of the investigation. Officers noted the presence of $2,400 in cash, Leah's driver's license, passport, checkbook, and credit card, all untouched. The presence of her mother's diamond engagement ring, found hidden under a floor mat, stood out. Investigators questioned why someone attempting to disappear would leave behind items of both personal and financial value. The theory of a voluntary disappearance began to appear unlikely. Attention then turned to the mechanical evidence. The vehicle's starter relay had been deliberately tampered with, enabling the Jeep to be started or placed into motion without a driver behind the wheel. This detail led investigators to consider the possibility that the crash had been staged. Fingerprints found under the hood were submitted for analysis but produced no matches in national databases. With no identifiable person connected to the prints and no evidence of injury at the crash site, suspicion of foul play grew stronger. While search efforts continued in the wilderness, detectives pursued Leah's travel history. Through debit card activity and surveillance footage, authorities were able to reconstruct much of her cross-country route from Durham, North Carolina to the Pacific Northwest. This trail confirmed she had reached Oregon by March 13th, when she was recorded on a gas station surveillance camera in Brooks. In the footage, Leah appeared healthy and calm. She was alone, and there was no indication she was in distress. This timestamp was significant. It provided the last confirmed sighting of Leah before her Jeep was discovered 5 days later. Investigators interviewed employees and reviewed surveillance tapes from other locations along Leah's likely travel route. One notable lead came from Bellingham, Washington, where a man claimed to have seen and spoken with Leah at a local restaurant shortly before her disappearance. According to his account, Leah had entered the establishment alone and conversed with him briefly. He described her as friendly and relaxed. However, the man's connection to Leah could not be substantiated beyond his statement, and no physical evidence tied him to the case. As such, the lead remained inconclusive. The lack of forensic evidence beyond the fingerprints and tampered relay presented a major hurdle. The investigation team continued to re-examine the crash site, hoping to uncover any overlooked detail. In 2006, 6 years after the vehicle was found, authorities organized a second search of the area using updated tools, including cadaver dogs and metal detectors. Once again, the search yielded no new information. The case remained suspended in a state of ambiguity, technically active but without progress. Despite the passage of time, the Roberts family continued working with investigators. They pushed for further testing and broader publicity of Leah's case. Law enforcement acknowledged the unique and puzzling nature of the disappearance. They revisited evidence, interviewed witnesses again, and kept the case file open. However, without new tips or developments, there was little forward movement. The physical state of the vehicle, undamaged valuables, hidden sentimental jewelry, altered engine wiring, served as the strongest collection of clues. But each clue led to more questions. If Leah had wanted to vanish, why leave so much behind? If she had met with foul play, why hadn't more evidence been left behind? And if she had suffered an accident, how could there be no trace of her body or movements? The terrain, vast and treacherous, could certainly conceal a person indefinitely. But the absence of any trace after multiple thorough searches cast doubt on a simple wilderness accident theory. Investigators were left with fragments. A car in a ravine, fingerprints with no match, personal items that spoke to a life interrupted, and no clear narrative to connect them. Public interest in the case continued to grow, particularly as the details of Leah's journey came to light. Her interest in Jack Kerouac, her spontaneous road trip, and her final note, "I'm not suicidal, I'm the opposite," created an emotional contrast to the cold, forensic puzzle left behind. While many speculated about the meaning of her actions, investigators remained bound to the facts, which were both sparse and perplexing. Despite no formal suspect being identified, the tampering with the Jeep's starter relay and the fingerprints under the hood remained strong indicators of potential involvement by a second party. Law enforcement did not rule out the possibility that someone Leah met during her travels may have played a role. However, without DNA matches, eyewitness testimony, or concrete forensic evidence, these possibilities remain speculative. No arrests were made. No charges were filed. Leah Roberts was officially listed as missing, her fate unknown. As of today, Leah's case remains open. Her Jeep is still held in police custody as physical evidence. Investigators continue to welcome tips, though no substantial leads have emerged in years. The file is revisited periodically, especially when new technology allows for reprocessing of evidence, but the trail remains cold. The investigation into Leah Roberts' disappearance highlights the challenges law enforcement faces in cases with minimal evidence and no witnesses. Despite early momentum, extensive searching, and national attention, the case reached a standstill. The facts were never enough to form a definitive conclusion. Instead, they mark the boundaries of a mystery that remains frozen in time. The disappearance of Leah Roberts has been examined through three primary investigative lenses: wilderness accident, foul play, and voluntary disappearance. Each theory holds elements grounded in the evidence collected, but none have led to definitive answers. Law enforcement has treated all three as viable possibilities, and each has its own set of facts, contradictions, and lingering questions. The first and perhaps most initially plausible theory was that of a wilderness accident. This line of thinking emerged immediately after Leah's Jeep was discovered crashed in a remote ravine in the North Cascades. The location itself, dense forest, limited cell reception, and steep terrain, created a scenario in which a person could easily become lost or injured. Investigators initially believed Leah might have survived the crash, but sustained a head injury, causing disorientation and prompting her to wander into the woods. The assumption was that she may have succumbed to the elements in an area so remote her body had yet to be recovered. However, exhaustive search efforts produced no trace of Leah. Ground teams, helicopters, cadaver dogs, and even a follow-up search in 2006 using metal detectors failed to uncover clothing, remains, or personal effects in or around the crash site. Given the severity of the terrain, the possibility of concealment was not impossible, but the absence of any trace after such thorough search operations cast doubt on the wilderness accident theory. The second theory, foul play, grew stronger as more details from the vehicle emerged. The Jeep's starter relay had been tampered with, specifically modified to allow the vehicle to be started or moved without a driver. This tampering pointed toward deliberate action, as it would have allowed the car to be launched off the road remotely or rolled down the embankment intentionally. Additionally, fingerprints were found under the hood. These prints did not match Leah's and could not be tied to any known individual in national databases. Their location, inside the engine compartment, suggested the individual had been manipulating the vehicle's internal systems. The placement of the Jeep, the absence of injury inside, and the mechanical interference painted a picture of potential staging. Compounding this theory was the later discovery of unidentified male DNA on Leah's clothing. Though no match was found and the source remains unknown, it suggested possible contact with someone who was not otherwise documented in her journey. No personal effects had been taken from the Jeep, which still contained Leah's credit cards, identification, and nearly $2,400 in cash. This was not consistent with a robbery or random attack. Yet the deliberate tampering, the foreign DNA, and the lack of physical evidence of Leah at the crash site aligned more clearly with the idea that someone else may have been involved in orchestrating her disappearance. Still, no suspects were identified and no arrests were made. Without further evidence, the foul play theory could not move beyond informed suspicion. The third theory considered by investigators and the public alike was that of voluntary disappearance. Leah's fascination with Jack Kerouac and his themes of spiritual freedom and self-reinvention served as a compelling backdrop. Her note to her roommate, referencing the Dharma bums and stating, "I'm not suicidal, I'm the opposite," reflected her inner drive toward meaning and personal evolution. She had withdrawn from college just before graduating, spoken of traveling to find herself, and embarked on an unannounced solo road trip. These behaviors suggested a desire to distance herself from her previous life and possibly start anew. However, several details conflicted with this explanation. Chief among them was the large amount of cash found inside the Jeep. If Leah had intended to disappear and begin a new chapter elsewhere, leaving behind thousands of dollars seemed counterintuitive. Also left behind were her most essential identification documents: her driver's license, passport, checkbook, and credit card. These would have been crucial to establishing a new identity or continuing her travels. Perhaps most poignantly, her mother's diamond engagement ring, an item described by family as Leah's most cherished possession, was found hidden beneath a floor mat. If she had planned a voluntary disappearance, it remained difficult to understand why she would part with something of such deep emotional value. The voluntary disappearance theory further weakened when considering the condition of the crash site. While someone seeking a fresh start might abandon their vehicle in a remote location, the method by which Leah's Jeep was found, crashed at high speed, likely unoccupied, and mechanically tampered with, did not match the patterns typically associated with intentional vanishings. Moreover, Leah had left no indication of her plans to family or friends beyond the vague note to her roommate. No contact was made after her disappearance, and no activity was recorded under her name. Investigators remained unconvinced that a spiritual journey, even one rooted in Kerouac's ideals, would conclude with the abandonment of money, documents, and sentimental objects, followed by total silence. When evaluating these three theories side by side, each provides potential answers and generates significant contradictions. The wilderness accident theory accounted for the remoteness of the crash site, but failed under scrutiny due to the total lack of physical remains. The foul play theory was supported by mechanical evidence and forensic traces, but lacked a suspect, motive, or eyewitness testimony. The voluntary disappearance theory fit elements of Leah's psychological and philosophical mindset, but was undercut by the illogical abandonment of resources and cherished possessions. Law enforcement pleaded all three theories as open investigative paths. In the absence of definitive forensic evidence, none could be ruled out entirely. Investigators continued to collect and test new data as technology improved, particularly regarding the unidentified fingerprints and male DNA. Public awareness campaigns and family advocacy kept the case in view, but no new information definitively tipped the scales in favor of one explanation over another. The case of Leah Roberts remains suspended between possibilities. Each theory casts a different light on her disappearance, yet all stop short of clarity. What is left are fragments, mechanical anomalies, forensic traces, unclaimed money, and a car resting silently in a ravine. Together, they outline a vanishing that defies easy categorization. The evidence refuses to align neatly with any single narrative. In the vacuum of certainty, all that remains are three plausible paths, none of them proven, and all still open. The disappearance of Leah Roberts has long captivated the public's attention, a case that blends haunting details with a frustrating lack of closure. From the moment her Jeep was discovered in the ravine off Canyon Creek Road, the story took root in the minds of both local communities and the broader true crime audience. The condition of the crash site, the untouched cash, the personal belongings left behind, and the eerie absence of a body sparked immediate curiosity. These elements defied conventional explanations, making Leah's case one of the most enigmatic unsolved disappearances in the Pacific Northwest. Despite being officially open, the case has gone cold. No significant leads have surfaced in years, and efforts to revive the investigation through renewed searches and testing have yielded no breakthroughs. Still, public fascination has endured. Online forums, podcasts, and documentary segments continue to revisit Leah's story, examining the known facts and raising questions that have yet to be answered. For many, the case represents a haunting intersection of mystery and realism, an ordinary person vanishing under extraordinary and unexplained circumstances. Friends and family have been central to keeping Leah's story in the public eye. Her siblings especially have remained active in advocating for the case. They've worked closely with law enforcement and media outlets to ensure that Leah's disappearance is not forgotten. To them, every unanswered question is personal. Every interview, every article, every social media post is a small act of preservation, a way to protect Leah's memory while pushing for answers that have remained elusive for more than 2 decades. Law enforcement, though limited by the lack of new evidence, still considers Leah's 1993 Jeep Cherokee a vital piece of the puzzle. Preserved in police custody, the vehicle remains the only tangible artifact from the disappearance. Every item found inside, from her identification documents to the carefully hidden diamond ring, has been logged and analyzed, but no single detail has broken the case open. The car is a container of unanswered questions, a physical marker of where Leah's visible journey ended. Investigators have repeatedly reviewed the evidence, yet the story it tells remains incomplete. What continues to feed public interest is the stark contrast between the clues that exist and the complete absence of resolution. The crash site suggests planning or foul play, yet no suspect has ever been identified. The presence of nearly $2,400 in cash and valuable personal effects counters the idea of robbery. The hidden ring suggests personal significance, yet offers no explanation for why Leah would abandon it. The untouched debit cards and passport contradict theories of voluntary disappearance. These contradictions are not just anomalies, they are central to why the case remains so firmly embedded in public consciousness. The Pacific Northwest setting has also played a role in shaping the story's mystique. Known for its vast stretches of wilderness, isolated roads, and unpredictable weather, the region has long been associated with unsolved disappearances. Leah's case has joined a list of mysterious vanishings tied to the landscape, cases where natural beauty meets unforgiving terrain. The remoteness of the area where her Jeep was found reinforces the idea that even in the modern age, people can simply vanish. This setting adds a layer of geographic enigma to an already confounding case. Local residents, too, have kept Leah's story alive. In towns near the North Cascades, her disappearance is still spoken of with a mix of empathy and unease. The crash site, while difficult to reach, has become a quiet point of reflection for some. True crime enthusiasts have retraced her journey, visited the last confirmed stops, and attempted to place themselves in her mindset, searching for answers through understanding. Yet the deeper one looks, the more elusive clarity becomes. The media's role in Leah's case has also evolved over time. Early coverage focused on the facts: disappearance, vehicle found, search efforts. As years passed, coverage shifted toward the emotional resonance of the story, the heartbreak of her family, the eerie silence that followed the crash, and the growing public obsession with what might have happened. True crime has expanded into a cultural phenomenon, and Leah's case is frequently cited as a story with all the hallmarks of a mystery that refuses to be solved. The unanswered questions that linger are not limited to what happened to Leah. They extend to what the existing evidence means. Why tamper with the starter relay if not to hide something? Why abandon personal items of value, including cash? Why was no trace of Leah ever found, despite extensive searches? Why would someone orchestrate a crash so elaborately and yet leave behind nearly every possession? These questions define the story's hold on the public imagination. They form the core of countless discussions, documentaries, and theories, each trying to connect dots that may never be aligned. In the absence of resolution, the case of Leah Roberts has become more than an investigation. It has become a narrative shaped by grief, confusion, and the enduring hope for answers. The public's role, while external, reflects a broader human need to make sense of the unexplained. People are drawn to Leah's story not only because it is unsolved, but because it feels both intimate and universal. A young woman searching for meaning, only to be swallowed by uncertainty. And so, the case remains suspended in time. No arrest, no confirmed sighting, no closure. Just a car in a ravine, personal belongings left behind, and a trail that went cold in the Pacific Northwest wilderness. Leah's story continues to echo because it asks the most haunting question of all. How can someone simply vanish? And why, after all these years, are we no closer to the truth? More than 2 decades have passed since Leah Roberts disappeared. Her case remains officially open, but no arrests have been made. The trail that began with her sudden departure from North Carolina and ended with a crashed Jeep in the Pacific Northwest has yielded no definitive answers. Despite extensive searches, a thorough investigation, and ongoing public interest, Leah's whereabouts are still unknown. The most significant piece of physical evidence continues to be Leah's 1993 white Jeep Cherokee, discovered in a ravine off Canyon Creek Road in North Cascades National Park. Preserved in police custody since its recovery in March 2000, the vehicle has been examined multiple times. Its contents, Leah's identification, personal belongings, large amounts of cash, and her mother's diamond ring remain central to understanding her final days. Yet despite the scrutiny, no new leads have emerged from the vehicle in recent years. One of the most puzzling aspects of the investigation is the presence of unidentified male DNA on Leah's clothing. This DNA, collected during the initial examination of evidence, has been tested and retested as forensic technology has advanced. Still, it has produced no matches in any criminal or national DNA database. The origin of the DNA and its relevance to Leah's disappearance remain unknown. Without a suspect to compare it to, it exists as an unresolved clue, suggestive but inconclusive. In 2006, law enforcement returned to the crash site with cadaver dogs and metal detectors in a renewed effort to find evidence that may have been missed during the original search. The area was combed again with attention to terrain that had shifted due to seasonal weather. Despite these efforts, no additional physical evidence was found. No remains, no clothing fragments, no objects that could confirm Leah's movements after the crash. The wilderness offered no further clues. Leah's family continues to hold on to hope. Over the years, they have worked closely with investigators, submitted public appeals, and shared Leah's story with the media to keep the case alive. Their goal has never changed: to bring Leah home or learn what truly happened to her. The emotional toll has been immense, but their determination has not faltered. Leah's siblings have stated publicly that they will never stop seeking answers, regardless of how much time passes. Law enforcement has also kept the case in active circulation. Though leads have grown scarce, detectives periodically review the evidence, re-examine interviews, and revisit tips. Technological improvements in forensic science have allowed for fresh analysis of old evidence, but no breakthrough has come. The fingerprints found under the Jeep's hood remain unidentified. Surveillance footage, including the last confirmed sighting in Brooks, Oregon, has not revealed any new insights. The lack of suspects, combined with the remote setting and the complexity of the case, has made it one of the most baffling cold cases in the region. Public interest remains strong. Leah's case continues to be discussed in true crime circles, featured in investigative podcasts, and covered in documentaries. The strange details, the untouched cash, the staged appearance of the crash, the lack of a body, fuel ongoing speculation and inquiry. The Pacific Northwest has become synonymous with such unresolved disappearances, and Leah's story is one of its most enduring mysteries. Despite the attention, no credible tip has emerged to move the investigation forward. Every potential lead has been followed, but none have pointed definitively to Leah's fate. The question of what happened to her remains unanswered. Was she the victim of an opportunistic crime? Did she suffer an accident far from the crash site? Or did something else entirely occur? These questions linger, suspended in the absence of fact. The case stands today as a painful reminder of how someone can vanish without a trace, even in the modern age. The investigation has grown cold, not for lack of effort, but due to the absence of answers. Every item, every interview, every theory has been examined, but the story remains incomplete. Law enforcement continues to encourage the public to come forward with any information, no matter how small. The hope is that one detail, overlooked or unknown, might someday bring clarity. Until then, Leah Roberts remains missing. Her Jeep rests in an evidence facility. Her family continues to search. And the key questions, what happened, where she went, and who might be responsible remain unanswered. After all these years, the facts remain frozen, waiting for the piece that will finally make sense of it all.